Greetings everyone, I am Raphael Casso and welcome to Aim to Thrive, Wellbeing Education for the construction industry, where we learn life skills to move from a surviving to thriving mindset. Wellbeing empowerment through education, leadership and engagement are principal areas in creating a healthy and safe work environment. Construction sites are large, complex, and workers are from diverse cultural backgrounds. Effective health and safety is engaging with all people in the front line. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce Vance Walker, who is an expert in improving worker well-being by connecting Maori culture with conventional health and safety. Vance, welcome to Aim to Thrive.
Kia ora tātou, nā mihi, Raphael, nā mihi mō te rōpū o construction, haumaru Maori, me hauora Maori, so ko Vance Walker, waunu mā te tau, whikarangi te manga waiputawa nā tuparau te iwi. So, my name's Vance Walker. Slowly people are calling me experts, being an ex-health and safety inspector, people used to call me a few other names, so it's quite a compliment, Raphael, so I appreciate both the invitation and the openness to participate in what is essentially your contribution to our discipline in health and safety. It's such a great discipline to be involved in, and I'm always privileged to engage with practitioners who are progressing something on their mind, but doing it really well with their industry or their sector. So I'd just like to commend you for your work. So
thank you so much. Yeah, the pleasure's all mine. You know, I really appreciate your time. So yeah, no, thank you very much, Vance. Those are kind words. Vance, please share a little bit about yourself and talk us through your area of expertise.
So I entered health and safety as a WorkSafe inspector, which was a rarity. Most of the guys that were joining at that stage were coming off the tools. So they had a background, you know, might be in construction or manufacturing. So I came straight in as an inspector, and I didn't have much health and safety experience, but what I did have was some good walking and talking skills. So they brought me on to engage with the farming sector. So I came from a farming background. My family were farmers. Right. And WorkSafe wanted someone to talk with the farmers. So I could talk the lingo, and over time I picked up health and safety. So I had a skill set, and then I built on that with health and safety.
Fantastic.
And yep. And so I started off a health and safety inspector, and then I went to Wakakote as one of their critical risk advisors on the highway. So I've had some work with residential builds, but also the big infrastructure jobs. So construction, I'm kind of familiar with. And then in June of this year, I stepped down and became a consultant based on discussions I had over the years with Maori and other vulnerable workers. And I formed the premise that they had a predisposition towards caution rather than safety. And I made that into a PhD study that's now become an evidence-based practice that's been used by a few workplaces. And it's put me in front of people like yourself, Raphael, that want to know a bit about what I've been up to and some of the research findings. Right. That I've gathered over the years. So as you pointed out, my area of expertise centres on connecting Maori culture with conventional health and safety, and how that's shaped as a pipeline. So I've developed a pipeline to basically connect mātauranga Māori, that's Maori culture, tikanga Māori, which is Maori protocols, and to put that together with conventional health and safety. And as a result, we get what's known as haumaru Māori. So haumaru Māori is Maori health and safety, but it's a combination of conventional and Maori culture. So, so that's in a nutshell what I've been up to. So whilst you aim to thrive, I aim to reprise. So I reprise Maori culture with conventional health and safety for improved health and safety outcomes. So that's probably how I ended up in this situation today and how I've ended up in front of you.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that sounds really exciting and really innovative. Vance, you know, construction sites are a melting pot of cultures. What are the biggest challenges for business owners when they're challenged with improving health and safety engagement with such diverse environments?
Yeah, so there's been three three recurring issues that I've experienced. One is about, the first one isn't about health and safety at all. It's about people being anxious about engaging other cultures because they don't want to offend them.
Sure.
And so that's a natural thing. So that's probably the foremost issue that comes to mind. So it doesn't matter if you're a business owner, a worker, an inspector, you've still got that level of anxiousness in terms of engaging with another culture. The second issue, and this is more pertains to practitioners or professionals, is the lack of evidence around Maori culture and how it improves health and safety. So the lack of evidence means there's a lack of practices. So there's a big gap in terms of what Maori culture can do in the workplaces. And the third issue, and this is the word for the day, I suppose, is called practice hegemony. So hegemony is a really academic term, and it means one group believes it's better than another based on the consent of itself. So conventional health and safety practice, by and large, thinks it's better than other types of health and safety. Right. And that's reinforced by our sector as well, because we are a compliance-based discipline, you know what I mean? So we're trying to follow rules, and our ability to explore different concepts is impeded. Apart from the leaders that pop out of nowhere, such as yourself, Raphael, who've got an idea that perhaps we should be building mental resilience, physical resilience in order to survive and improve our health and safety. And those thought leaders or those people actually start to operate in the grey area, and the grey area is where you get new practices coming through. So three things: being anxious, a human characteristic, a lack of evidence and therefore lack of proof that Maori culture can work, and practice hegemony. But I think on balance, the one to address foremost is just being anxious about engaging another culture, and that just takes time and confidence in role models and examples.
Yeah, sure thing. Vance, for health and safety education, especially for diverse workplaces, why doesn't one size fit all in your opinion?
Yeah, so if you were to reverse engineer things, so it's the learning preferences of workers, eh? So yes. Filipino construction workers have got a really hierarchical, compliance-based mentality. And other workers, Maori workers, for instance, they can walk off the reservation and do things completely out of kilter from what the health and safety system does. Sure. So when you understand the learning preferences or the learning culture of the worker, then you can gear the systems to basically bring out the best of them. So in your area, for instance, mental and physical resilience, there'll be some cultural prompts there that a Filipino worker or Maori worker will have, so cultural values. Yes. If you can understand those values, understand the educational, the learning preferences, and put that together in a learning package that suits better the worker, yes, and you're going to get that outcome. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's nice, like bespoke sort of communication that is highly engaging, depending on cultural values. No, I love it. I love it. That makes a lot of sense. What have been in your time in this area? What have been the main improvements to health and safety, connecting Maori culture to conventional health and safety? What have you observed? Working with people and by sort of installing the Maori culture. What have you seen for yourself over time? The improvements.
So there's only been one improvement. That's an openness towards Maori culture being used or deployed in workplaces. Yes, as a health and safety practice. So I haven't seen any tangible benefits in terms of Maori culture being practiced. So
sure. Maybe
to elaborate on that, all the support I get is based on two things: goodwill of different people. It comes down to people rather than agencies. And the second thing is there is an appetite for people to understand Maori culture and to repackage it as health and safety practices. There's a few things in the background. So for instance, the government has a supply chain, and that supply chain is now saying your bid will go to the top of the list or near the top of the list if you can prove to us that you understand something about Maori health and safety. that you've got a practice on board. So there's an incentive there from the client for the contractor to think a bit more.
Sure.
So I guess my summary to your answer would be the goodwill would be the improvement that I've been seeing in the last maybe 4 to 3 years in terms of a tangible benefit. Yeah, there's nothing really yet.
Okay, so it's
but the conditions are
work in
there.
progress. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What lessons for leaders can be learnt and shared across all cultures with your findings so far, do you feel?
Leadership in health and safety doesn't necessarily mean the leadership that we think it does. So leadership to me means a worker, a steel cabler, a welder, a concrete pourer, a labourer. The leadership that I like to see is them making their own decisions that improve their health and safety, regardless of the system.
Sure.
So, so some of the things that I'd like to see is our upper echelon leaders,
Yes.
and those are the frontline leaders. I mean, the board directors, they've got duties of due diligence. The frontline directors, they're the ones that set the pace, the role model, the bad practices, the poor practices for the workers to follow. So investing in those frontline middle tier managers is quite important for us, because that means that they can multiply their good attitudes, their behaviours, their values of health and safety onto the other workers. And so you've got behavioural changes going on. The majority of incidents that I've seen in health and safety are usually attributed to the workers' behaviour, but when you really dig deep, it's about the system failing the workers. So in your area, such as mental health and physical resilience, so to speak, it's the system that lets down the worker. So there's an expectation that a worker turn up to work and is mentally fit, but if he's on day 5 of fatigued, the production levels are up. I mean, he's already been disadvantaged from fulfilling some good thinking processes in terms of making some independent health and safety decisions. Because ultimately, a worker is in charge of their own health and safety behaviours. There's things we can do to set conditions, but it's the worker that basically sets the scene for their improved behaviours, and that comes back to the system being able to support the worker. But like the educational preferences, the system has to support the worker. There's an over-reliance on the worker holding up a system. But if the system isn't working, then the worker's disadvantaged.
Yeah. Vance, construction workers have unfortunately a survival mentality. They're just trying to make it to the end of the day. A lot of them, they're trying to make it to the end of the week, more so than other people in different industries. In your opinion, what habits can workers create and attitudes can they change to shift this mentality to a thriving mindset? And what is the connection between culture and well-being? What is the connection of culture and well-being in your opinion?
So there's a few questions in there, so maybe if I try to break it down. So, all right. So I think worker habits or behaviours are framed by the business owners of health and safety systems. So again, you created that risk. You fix it, and you make sure that those systems respond better to the worker.
Yes.
Survivor mentality. I like to think more in terms of the viability of systems to enable thriving mindsets or survival mentality. So what are the opportunities for business owners and health and safety practitioners to enable thriving mindsets? The data concerning Maori workers represents a narrative of deficit. So if I was to believe everything health and safety data says about Maori workers, I should be dead or close. I should have had a few close brushes, but that's not been my narrative. I've been fairly well protected, well presented, well participated in health and safety. So in turn, employers and health and safety practitioners in general perceive Maori workers as liabilities. So to partly answer your question, the data concerning Māori workers must be more balanced. And because you're talking about mindsets, qualitative sort of things come into play. So employers and health and safety practitioners in general have to stop deficit thinking and deficit practices, or what I've been talking about is systems that fail workers. They need to develop systems that position workers to succeed. And succeeding can also mean mindset and being able to view their well-being a lot better.
Yes.
Again, the issue there is about professionals or practitioners or business owners being anxious about engaging other cultures in case they cause offence. So, and again, we've got the lack of evidence. We've got that term called practice hegemony. So those three issues make it hard for business owners to develop systems because they haven't engaged with workers properly. Part of your question was how can people find out the connection, or how does Māori culture improve well-being views? So my case study showed that when Māori workers were connected with their culture, their risk perception improved. So if you think about the bread and butter stuff around health and safety, there's risk identification, assessment, control, and monitoring. Perception actually comes before all of that. In research, perception's a big thing, but in practice, it's hardly ever mentioned. So how do workers perceive risk? So my case study showed when we connected Māori workers with Māori values, their perception of risk became more acute, and they used the controls a lot better. So for instance, one of my case studies, they'd turn up for work, they'd open their manual, and the manual would say if there was a landslip, they had to navigate their way around it or not proceed. So Māori workers' production targets, they wouldn't work their way around it, nor would they stop. They'd just go over it. So they get trips and falls coming in, because that's what the system was geared to the worker. And then when we said to workers, well, kia taupatoa, being cautious, what would you do then? And so they changed their practice. So they sent a guy up ahead with a radio. When he spotted a slip, they changed the route completely. And therefore they were eliminating the risk. They weren't crossing over and falling over and breaking bones and stuff like that. Right. And in that case, their value of Māori culture, or the value kia taupatoa, shaped the way that they perceived risk. And because they valued that risk a bit more, they were able to change the way that they controlled it. And it was a lot better than the manual had specified, which really wasn't saying anything apart from if you see something, don't do it. Well, it's like a red rag to a bull for some workers, because they just, if you don't specify, if you don't let them make independent decisions about how they should control the risk, then they usually won't control the risk. They'll just follow the manual. So that's an example of Māori culture shaping the perception risk. The other thing was, we're talking about well-being. So when Māori workers were able to connect with their culture, they were able to connect with one another a lot better. So Māori culture is about relational, it's all relational, it's not transactional. So you turn up to a construction site and there's this crew's doing that crew's doing that. On a Māori lens, it's not about crew X, Y, and Z. It's about how am I part of this team and how do we relate? So there was a greater emphasis amongst those workers that I case studied about being more cognizant about the welfare of each other, right, and about being cognizant about the welfare of themselves. And they were more aware that they had to shape the systems to make that happen for them. Yes. The other finding was from the families at home. So they had a more happier worker. And when he got back home, he was talking more about working positive terms. Yes. Because prior to that, all they'd been talking about was long hours. Sure. The job sucks, underpaid. So it had changed their mindset. So they woke up in the morning wanting to go to work. Now, isn't that a great thing? Every morning,
absolutely,
wanting to go to work.
That's part of that
And then-
thriving mindset is sort of the
Yeah. And so the
energized,
last finding, yes. And the last finding in terms of wellbeing was they felt proud about being Maori workers. So not only were they connected with one another, they were connected with their families, they were connected about their work, and they were proud about being workers. So that recipe or those ingredients provided better health and safety outcomes in terms of well-being, but also the way that they manage risks. So,
that's tremendous.
Yeah, there's examples of guys talk about te whare tapa whā that's been practiced in a few sites now, and that's been incorporated into conventional health. So I'll just backtrack. Te whare tapa whā, well known. It got dropped into Who's on Location app, and every day workers have to self-assess their well-being using the 4 whā. And if the score is low, then the wellbeing manager contacts them or goes visits them. And so they're having discussions of what's up today. And there's often stuff, I broke up with my missus, I'm running out of money. So all those things that aren't related to work, but actually have a big impact on work, they're being unbundled.
Sure.
And then the data then can be collated to look at the overall well-being of the workforce, which is important from a strategic level. Right? The bosses that you don't see probably won't even see them on site. They're looking at that data, so they're looking at the performance of their health and safety in terms of the well-being of their workforce. So, and that's well correlated. So, those are examples of Māori culture connecting with workers and providing a better overview of their well-being. And again, we're trying to position workers to make better decisions for themselves rather than relying on systems that have been failing them in the past.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think I've answered. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's great. I
So.
asked a lot of questions, so you went through them. Like, I really appreciate that. No, that was great. Because I think when I first contacted you, said, "Oh, I've only got a handful of questions," and so what I've done is I've actually made lots of questions at once. So yeah, so thank you very much. Vance, it's been fantastic to talk to you. Where can people find you, and what's next?
So people can find me on the LinkedIn profile.
Great. I'll make sure to include all your links to contact you. People to contact you.
Yeah,
directly.
VK Vance Walker on LinkedIn. Most of my, and then I'm starting up a new website called indigisafe.com. That'll be in a few months' time. That's aimed at the global market of health and safety. So a few people have asked me to put out different products. There'll be some micro-credential stuff going on that is about people wanting to know about basically what we've discussed, how Māori culture, the history of Māori culture. There's a history of Māori culture. So for instance, kia taupatoa. So for instance, Māori arrived between 1000 and 1200 BCE, and kia taupatoa, like the value I've been talking about, caution, probably developed around 1200. So kia taupatoa, in terms of the value of cautious behaviour, has been around 822 years, and yet it's only now being discussed in terms of modern health and safety. So there's a pedigree there that when you talk about to Māori workers and other Māori workers, they find it quite appealing because they don't want to miss out on it because it is part of their DNA.
Yeah.
My future plan is to meet more workers and practitioners and to get in front of different thought leaders such as yourself, Raphael. I have to finish my PhD. I'm hoping to do that by the end of the year. I want to design and offer micro-credentials because I get a lot of requests for information, and a micro-credential will just basically give people a portal that they can go and find out what I know. And then I want to work at the governance level, so I might try to get on a few boards. And then my overall goal is to open a new genre of health and safety practice unique to Aotearoa, New Zealand. So your work's quite interesting because you're asking questions about what does the survivability or the resilience of a worker mean to Kiwi workers, not just about any worker in the world. What are the things that we need to understand to provide workers so they get identity, they have an identity of what they are as New Zealand construction workers,
Yes.
And part of that identity is, what do we value? Do we value well-being because it's something written down in some health and safety practice, or do we value well-being because it means we can go home to our families, we can relate more to our workmates.
Yeah, just adding to that, it's just valuing yourself more as well.
Yep.
You know, sort of putting yourself first and say, hey, look, I want to feel happier. I want to be healthier. I want to have energy. I want to wake up and enjoy my job. You know, and you know, all the downstream benefits of that sort of thinking, that, you know, for the person that you're working for your friends, for your family, you know. So yeah, exactly. You know, that's my.
And all those downstream benefits are indifferent to whether you're a company director, a residential home building firm, or you're the guy who's behind the concrete pump at 5 o'clock in the morning.
That's
People
right.
basically want the same things.
They do.
You've just got to provide the positions, or provide them with the situation that they can achieve things together, to differing degrees, of course. They're all moving in the same direction.
Absolutely. Vance, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear your insights, and I'll make sure to put your contact details in a link below my video, and I hope to keep in touch and hear of all of your adventures going forward. I'm sure they'll be fantastic.
I'm more interested in how you're going to develop, because you remind me of what I was 5 years ago in terms of Maori culture. Yeah. So it starts off a little thing, then you get a bit more courage to talk about to the so-called experts, and then slowly you grow your confidence and your knowledge base.
Yes.
And then suddenly something tips you over, and then you say, actually, I really do think I've got something to offer. And then people will resonate with it, and then it becomes a real contribution towards your discipline. So you're on the right track to making us.
Oh, thanks a lot. I hope so. I hope that it's helping people to just improve, just to feel happier and to thrive. You know, so that's the education that's the name for it. It's aiming to thrive internally, and then of course physically as well. So thank you very much, Vance, and let's keep in touch.
For sure. Appreciate your time. Kia ora tātou. Kia ora.